Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms Chats. And we share resources that families need so they can keep learning and keep having fun in spite of the obstacles of the pandemic and everything's happening in the world. And so I'm really excited to be sharing another at-home learning activity. And we have a repeat guest. We have Chef Dave.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, yeah. So Dave Terrazas is the founder of Foodie Classroom, and let me pop that up. So he says the website is almost ready. But Chef Dave he's done like many amazing things in his career, and it's really fun to talk to him because he can draw these connections between like food and national security and public health and farming and chemistry and your taste buds and just the whole it's all like all knowledge is connected, and talking to Chef Dave is an experience. So that's why I'm super grateful that he writes guest posts for us. For we call it Charter a Voyage of Learning, all these learning activities. And so thank you, Chef Dave. And what are we cooking today?
Well, thanks again for having me back on. I love being on here with you, Inga. You're so fantastic. So it's Valentine's Day coming up here in a couple of days. We have this weird weather that's going to keep people indoors. Usually this is the one holiday where you're springing some major bucks, on the one you love, probably to go out. And we can't really do that this year if we're being really mindful about what's happening with this pandemic and and the weather, of course, compounds the issue. We want to stay home and we want to find alternate ways to celebrate with the cuties, right? Well, if we're staying home, that probably means there are going to be little cuties there as well, which is going to change the nature of this year's holiday, at least, right? So I thought about, okay, what are we going to do here? And you and I talked a little bit about it and came up with this cool idea. It's all the rage right now, charcuterie, right? Shark in the dark, date night, all kinds of cool things. What is charcuterie? I get asked this all the time. It's like, Dave, you know, uh, there's this buzzword. It looks like you can order food on a board, but we want to do it ourselves. How do we do that? And so I thought, hey, okay, let's talk about it. But since we're talking about it for the holidays, we're going to call it Cutie Charcuterie, right? And
That's
so,
great.
all right, there it is. Excellent. So here's the deal. When I started creating Foodie Classroom, I kind of knew that kids were learning a lot more about food. They know way more about food than I did when I was growing up. And I grew up in a foodie family. And it's just amazing. You have charter schools that are doing a really great job too, like the Healthy Kids program with IDEA or SSTSA. They use food in some of their science labs, and even the St. Philip's Early College High School program, that's part of the independent school district. It's still set up to design with a full up culinary program that kind of gets kids ready, since they're already taking interest in it, to enter college programs later that will expand on that. And I love that. I am all about that. And of course, when I created Foodie Classroom, I decided I wanted to integrate that as much as I could with regular K through 12 curriculum. So kind of using that, keeping that in mind, people ask me, well, Dave, what does charcuterie even mean? It sounds French, it sounds fancy, right? Well, it is. It kind of is, but it didn't start that way. It started very humble. And it's actually one of those things where you set the price point for what you want to do, but you can certainly do something really cute for the kids at home or for the cuties at home, including the big ones, just by being kind of smart about it. So I want to talk a little bit about like what are the meats that go on there, what are the cheeses, and what else do you put on there? Can we do that today?
Yes, let's do that. Oh, I want to give folks some tips on like where to find the good stuff, right? So this is San Antonio Charter Mom's blog. And then on the Charter Voyage of Learning, that's where we have like all these recipes, including the ones that Chef Dave did last summer about like the taste bud activity with the bruschetta. I love that one. And then also the Halloween, the spooky snack board, right, which has those cute skewers, right? So, but like on the blog, I want folks to know there's an ingredient list that's separate from the whole blog post. So if you just want to print the ingredient list and take it shopping with you, that is a little pro tip from the editor here. So, but yeah,
That's
let's
fantastic.
talk about the meats.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that, by the way, for making that available, because I am going to be pretty much building what is on that card. And so the thing about meats is like when you talk about charcuterie is really, 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 really old. Okay, most people think about it like a French fancy culinary thing, and it is. It was pretty much about 100 years ago or so, structured in such a way that a particular chef in the fancy French kitchen would handle this part, of the cuisine. Yeah, that part of the kitchen was called garde manger, and garde manger is basically the pantry. Okay, so think about what a pantry is. It's cold items, room temperature items, and so any kind of sausages or forced meats. We'll get into that in just a second. Would be the domain of the garde manger chef. Okay, but really, um, you can go back to like the 1400s, and back in those days, the French royalty pretty much organized the culinary arts into guilds. And so you had like a roasting guild and you had a charcuterie guild. Charcuterie loosely translates into pork butchery, but charcuterie is not limited. It's not exclusive to pork. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. But we want to talk about meats, and you can kind of categorize meats into a couple of different things. So the whole purpose of this is to preserve meats, and the historical context was to really get meats to last across the wintertime. Okay, so it's easy to go hunting in the summer or in the fall. It's easy to have livestock out in your pen if you're an agronomist and your family's got a little patch of land. But across those winter months, you got to make things stretch. Plus, I mean, let's face it, most of us don't butcher a hog, that's in our homestead. But if we did, we'd know that was several hundred pounds of meat. And what are you going to do with several hundred pounds of meat if you're like an 8-person family, right? That will last you a long time. So preservation was key, and without refrigeration, they use salt a lot. So what you have is basically 2 different kinds of meats. And so for this part of the presentation, I'm going to drop my camera down to the cutting board to show everybody.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to make Chef Dave's bigger so y'all can see it better, and I'm going to get small.
That'll work. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's awesome. We can see it real well. Wow, look at all the colors. I say I love your board. That board is awesome. The exotic wood.
I've got a great friend who does woodworking.
Oops! The camera's dropping just a little bit. Okay.
Let me see if I can. Those ring lights are heavy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have a friend who makes these custom boards, and he did it out of maple and padauk, which is a fantastic red wood, very much like redwood, and it's just beautiful. And it helps set up charcuterie because it's really an aesthetic thing. But I have found some fantastic, cutting boards, different shapes and sizes at like discount retailers. For example, I can find a small bamboo one like this that has
oh wow
on that. Yeah, and the meats and cheeses would look great on that. I've got like a cross cut of some yellow pine.
Wow.
So, you can
cool.
use anything you want, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about meat. So we're talking about preservation. There are basically 2 kinds, and I'm going to try to there we go. We'll fix this camera. There are 2 essential types. You have forced meats, and sausage would be a category of that, but so would pâtés. And we're really just talking about meats that have been put through a grinder or chopped up with added fat, and then they're essentially encased and put into some kind of container to shape them, and then often aired, either smoked or cured in some way, but they're often raw. So you have a lot of sausage-looking types of meats, and the Italians like to call that whole process making salumi, which is where the word salami comes from, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But if you're at the supermarket, whether it's the deli counter or you go to the prepackaged part, you see all these different names, and it's like, what is what, So I see one called salami, but then I see Genoa, and I see cotto, and I see calabrese. What is what? So the bottom line is they're all pretty much salami. It just means the dry cured, or smoked sausage, and you have different styles. So like I've got some Genoa right here. Genoa, in terms of like salamis, think of like a rainbow where you have mild flavor to heavy flavor. So on the mild end, you have Genoa, which is very mild. It's kind of refined. It's got small, particulate of like the meat and the fat content together. And I like those because they bend really nicely. I usually get them cut down by a deli cutter, like a deli slicer, down to a number 1, which is the smallest or thinnest setting that they have. And it's because I love that melt in the mouth feel for these kinds of meats, when they're on a board. So that's what I have. And what I like to do is they're usually in round tubes. I like to fold them in half and just put them on the board. And so if you follow along with that list I have today, I'm using 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 different types of meats. And everybody always asks me, well, how do I put them on the board? I don't know how to make them look all pretty. Well, really, it's really up to you. It's a creative thing. It's an artistic kind of deal. So you can go like symmetrical, like I'm going to do today, where I put meats in the corners. And I tend to like to put down the meats first, then the cheeses, and then everything else to fill in. But you could also go with like an asymmetric profile. It's really just based on aesthetics. But also consider that if you have a large family and you have people on every side of the table of the board, you may want to put the same meats on one side and the other just to keep your hands from reaching across, you know?
Yeah.
And that's going to happen this year, Inga. So,
Yep.
okay. So on the other side, if Genoa is like really mild, you have others like Calabrese. Calabrese is actually a pretty clean one. It's spiced only with salt and pepper traditionally, but it has red wine in it. And that's the thing that makes it very unique to itself. Then you have stuff like chorizo sausage, which is actually Spanish. And you can see the particulate of fat is a little bit more granular. It's a little more coarse. And it's also heavily flavored with smoky paprika. And I like that for a little bit of piquant quality to it. So I'm going to add some of those to my board. By the way, pepperoni is not Italian. Pepperoni is Italian American. And it was, it was created around the turn of the century, last century, by Italian Americans who were trying to copy something that you would have found in southern Italy, but with their own Americanized lean towards it. So technically, pepperoni is a salami. It is edible as it is. So like when you buy those packages of the pre-cut pepperonis to take home and put on your pizzas, you can actually eat those. We're just conditioned to kind of eat them kind of crispy on top of a mozzarella bed, on top of a,
right, on a crust. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Okay. So you have forest meats. Pâtés would be the same thing. Pâtés are usually like pork liver with maybe a little fat or something else added to it. If it's, they can call it straight way, which is pretty much just the meat product with a little bit of fat and some basic seasoning. Then you have what's called country style. And country style would be like if they added mushrooms or whole peppercorns or some kind of extra seasoning. Okay.
Yeah.
They do the same thing with salamis. It's kind of a proprietary thing with some makers, what they want to add to it. But that's what it is. Then you have a mousseline style. And that's kind of like if you had smoked salmon, and I don't have any here today, but you added maybe some heavy cream to it and put it in a food processor and made it almost like a paste. Right. That was mousseline, or mousse for short. So when you see salmon mousse, that's what that is. They also tend to add eggs to fish and poultry-based mousseline. So if you have an egg sensitivity, be aware of that, Okay, so that's that. Then you have other types. You have, as part of the forest meat family, you also have things like head cheese. And I don't know if you can see this.
Whoa, the texture.
Texture. So it's gelatinous because it's actually made by taking little bits of meat and encasing it in aspic or like a natural meat gelatin. I'm actually going to throw some of that on there because that is a preservation method. So
nice.
Yeah. So not for everybody, but it is for me. So I'm going to add those in there. Okay. And then we come to the other category of charcuterie meats, and that is going to be pretty much dry, air-cured, salted, or brined meats. And that's going to be like what people normally know as like prosciutto. They hear the word prosciutto a lot, or jamon. So prosciutto is basically a leg of a pork leg. It's done like a ham. It's basically ham. But instead of, roasting it or what have you, they salt it, and then they hang it to air dry. And salt does a couple of different things. First of all, and let me see, I think I've got some, I've got some that I didn't fold. So let me try to get this open real quick and show you what they do is they salt it. And if you notice, I of course, I get mine cut with a number 1 on the deli slicer, which is really super thin, right? You can see a little bit of fat on that meat, but it's pretty lean right in the center there. And it's very easy for me to handle. Okay, I couldn't do that if it was a raw meat product just by itself. So salt does a couple of different things. Salt will create an osmosis effect whereby it pulls water out of the muscle of the meat and then dissolves the salt, and then the cells actually absorb the salt water back in. And what that does is it prevents like bacteria from growing on them while they're air curing. But it also does, of course, it seasons the meat, and it also does other things like it dehydrates. So some of the water is not going to come back into the meat, right? And when it does that, there's less for the bacteria to work on, and it also intensifies flavors. Now, the bacteria we're talking about that does exist is the stuff that can handle that change of saltiness, and that's lactobacilli. We know lactobacilli is the same bacteria that creates buttermilk, yogurt, dairy product when dairy product fermentation happens, right? Same thing happens with these meats. And what they actually do is the lactobacilli actually goes after and eats carbohydrates that are present even in meat, and it breaks them down into sugars. It actually breaks it down further into lactic acid, and that's how we get all these incredible flavors in stuff like
Wow.
yeah, and charcuterie
I
meat. So
didn't I didn't know there was a fermentation aspect to like jamon or prosciutto. I knew about the salt, but I didn't that
yeah,
is so interesting. Wow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the salt actually kills off a lot of the microorganisms and bacteria that would not be good for us. And
Yeah.
it so happens that this particular one can handle the drop in pH or the rate, the increase in acidity and salinity, and it actually goes to work to help make things better. Oops, sorry, there we go. So
And how cool. I mean, people have been making ham like that like since like the Roman Empire, right? I mean, like it goes
pretty much,
back. It's
yeah.
a really, really old recipe.
There's evidence that the air curing for ham like this happened as far back as the old ancient Roman Empire in the area of Gaul, which is present day France, of course, right? And
Right.
and so yeah, it was for that reason. It was to get things to stretch across a cold winter. Now, I mentioned that it's not exclusive to pork. You can get beef products done the same way. There is a meat type called bresaola, and it's basically inside round. It's been air cured the same way, and it's much darker. So I'm going to put some of that here in the center.
That's so cool. I've never tried that, but that is I'm totally getting some of that soon.
It's for us Texas beef lovers, you got to have it.
Yeah, and again, it adds that color, right? Because you've got right like an orangey red for the paprika in the chorizo, and then you've got pink in like the head cheese and the Genoa, and then brown in the braseola. Yeah, great colors.
Totally, totally. So with cheeses, what I recommend to everybody is I tell everybody the same thing. With meats and cheeses, go with textures. Go firm, go kind of the middle, and go soft. So to me, firm would be kind of like some of these harder salamis, whereas somewhere in the middle might be like the prosciutto, and then the soft might be like a pate. Well, the same holds true for cheeses. Okay, so I've got like a really firm Gouda, smoked Gouda. So
Mm.
Gouda is traditionally encased in red paraffin wax, but the smoked Gouda, you can kind of see the smoke ring on it. That's how you tell the difference, okay, visually. Now, I could go with slices and fold them in half, but what I noticed is that when you slice them too thin, they actually snap. They don't really bend really pretty.
Oh, right.
Consider you might want to let it get to room temperature before you put them out, before you start bending them. But you can do it that way. You could also just kind of cleave out like pie wedge shapes out of a wheel like that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Same thing with cheddar. Of course, a big block of cheddar is not so pretty, aesthetically pleasing on the board. You could offset it to make it look nice, but I tend to like to cube those medium-bodied cheeses. So I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to add them. Since I'm going symmetrical, I'm going to go opposite that particular cheese.
Okay? Yeah.
And just make a couple of cube mountains right here. Okay.
Those remind me of math. Those remind me of like math. The cubes remind me of the like math manipulatives, like little math toys I used when my kids were learning like how to make tens.
Oh yeah. So and also I was just thinking about. I thought you were going somewhere else with that.
Oh yeah.
One of the last posts I did for you, we talked about cheese and olive skewers, and
oh yeah,
a little bit of a marinade, like olive, a little bit of olive oil, some lemon juice, lemon zest, and some garlic. You can do the same thing. You could actually drizzle some of that on your cheese cubes here, or you can have a little dipping cup. Okay, so there's that, and then I have, of course, goat cheese. And goat cheese, I have a recipe in there that I gave you for the post.
Yeah.
That has a little bit of fresh rosemary and some garlic in there and some black pepper. But for today, I'm going to do something a little bit different because we're talking about a sweetie board, right? For our cutie charcuteries, our cuties. So I'm going to put like the brick right here. And what I'm actually going to do instead is I'm going to take a little bit of honey. And I'm just going to do a drizzle on top of that. So we have sweet and savory. Okay. And it's kind of cold in my kitchen, so it might take a little while to get out.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, goat cheese has such a great flavor.
Yeah. Just dropped something. Okay, so I have that there. Now I can top that with little things if I want to. Like I can have little bits of crushed almond or pecans. But since we're talking about building a board, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it as is. But you could scoop these out, certainly, and I'll talk a little bit about crackers in just a second. But now we need some sour, right? So I like cornichons, and cornichons look like gherkins, but they're just sour little sour pickles. There were more in there, Inga, but I was ready to go at 3 o'clock and I got a little hungry. So I might have had a few of them. So I'm going to put that on the board. And no charcuterie board would be complete without olives. So I'm going to have some black olives. And I'm going to have some green olives stuffed with garlic because I love those.
Yeah.
And you notice that I'm using little ramekins. You can have it out, kind of natural style. But I tend to like to put on, for that reason, because then you have liquid everywhere. I like to use ramekins for anything that has like a watery brine. Okay. It's much easier to get a hold of without making a big mess.
And we have, at our house, we have little glass, little like just the same size as the ramekins.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to take the apple off for just a second. Of course, grapes are a traditional accompaniment. I like to cut them into small bundles like this. And then I just like to kind of put them inverted, stem side down.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Because I do think they look beautiful that way. And I'm just going to kind of put them around the board because I have my meats and cheeses down already. I now can kind of focus on the aesthetics of the board, right? Now, we talked about Cutie Charcuterie being a Valentine's themed board. We have to have straw babies. Got to have them.
Oh, the color. I love it.
I'm loving color today.
Yeah.
They're now coming out. The crops are not perfect just yet, but you can still find some pretty good strawberries out there. I love them. And, if we're going to do that, we might as well have a few raspberries. You can put that by the goat cheese since we got some honey on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I noticed you've got the stems on. So one of my kids, they love like little kitchen gadgets. So one of their favorite things is a strawberry huller, and it like pulls the little stem out.
Yeah. That's fun.
Which like it's not necessary, but it's fun.
It isn't necessary, but the reason I do that is because it's easy to dip. So one of the last recipes I gave you was chocolate ganache. So you could actually melt some chocolate. All you would have to do is take a little bit of like what I have here is a little bit of heavy cream in a pot, in a saucepan, and then some mini chocolate chips, and you can pour that cream right in there, let that melt. You kind of do a 50-50 mix. And once those chocolate chips start to melt, you just stir that with a spoon and you have a chocolate dipping sauce for those berries.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so simple.
So
I can see the steam. It must be cold in your kitchen because I can see the steam coming off the cream and the ganache.
It was on the range behind me here.
Yeah.
So I also have grape tomatoes. You could add some savory. Nobody said, put them next to the cheddar. Cheddar and tomatoes are fantastic pairings, especially next to that beef.
Wow.
So I'll throw some of that in there. Okay. Now we have to have
beautiful colors.
We have to have things to actually eat with, to eat on. So I do like crackers. And I mentioned that, in the blog post I mentioned, go with a real simple cracker. Go with a water cracker, water type. So I have these. I do have these, but these have black pepper and sea salt. And I generally don't put the crackers on the board because I like to save room for all the meats and stuff, all the goodies. But I am going to do that today because it just looks nice. So you just put them around. But now
just for TV.
You do savory like that, Nina. There's no reason why you can't have sweets as well. So today, let me see if I can get them out. I had everything underneath my little island here, and I'm trying to dig it out. Okay. So you can have, like, I like those cookies, those Mexican or Spanish cookies they call Marias, because they're little dry wafers. And they're slightly sweet, and they go great with that honey and goat cheese.
Wow.
There you go.
Ooh, look at that. Yeah.
Put some of those in there as well. Okay.
Oh, with the berries. Wow.
Now, of course, it's the time, it's Valentine's Day time, so we have to have some chocolate in here. You can't do it without chocolate. So before I do that, I'm going to add a few apricots so we can get some dried fruit because it's consistent with the whole preservation thing, some dried fruit.
That's right.
So I'll get some of those in there. Okay. I'm going to add some smoky almonds. And what I now like to do is like fill the gaps. Just fill it up so you don't see the board. Of course, I got beautiful board. If I had like a real basic looking board, I'd want to maybe cover it up a little bit.
It makes sense now how you did meats, then cheeses, right? And then the things in dishes, and then filling in.
I always follow that convention. I do meats, cheeses, fruits, and pickles, and then everything else. So now I've got some chocolate, and so there are little colays that you can find in some of the finer grocery stores, which are
Oh
really
yeah.
for melting. They look like coins, but I just got some Cadbury bars or some other chocolate bars, and I just broke it in the shards, and you can add those on here like this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Here's some dark chocolate ones. I can get them in here as well. Just shards of glossy chocolate. It's nice and tempered. Tempered means it's in its crystalline form, so when you snap it, you can hear it snap.
Ah, yeah.
Clean. But you can have all the yummy treats on there as well. I like caramel, so I like to buy like those mini turtles that have the caramel and the pecans and the chocolate and enrobement.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna add a few around the board. I'm getting hungry doing this, Inga. So as soon as I'm just gonna go nuts on this, but for the little ones, you're gonna want to have some sweets on there, and that's fine. Sweet and savory and sour is really great. We talked about the five senses and the taste buds previously. Those are three of the primary sensory experiences, along with salt, right?
Right.
So that's important. And then, what else do I have down here? Oh, if you really want to make it look really cute, you can go get some fine chocolates that kind of have like the gold foil wrappers.
Ah.
And you can throw those on there. And the kids, of course, are going to want to go for those right away. You have to say, no, you got to eat your pate or your cheeses first. But
this is a great way to encourage kids to eat a variety of foods because they can just have a little taste of everything.
Just a little taste of everything. It really is. So you kind of use something that they're familiar with to introduce something they're not familiar with. And, I was a private school chef early in my career. That's exactly how we got them to do it. So I'm just going to put some around the board just like this. Okay. Wow. And that's pretty much it. When you talk about like Cutie Charcuterie for the Valentine's holiday, go get those fine chocolates. You can get cordial cherries and put them on here. You can, any kind of sweets that you like. You can do the bonbons or the little chocolates, chews. Caramels are great for a charcuterie board because they go with a lot of great cheeses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic and really easy to do. Look, it took me 5 minutes to do this, and so I could probably feed 6 people right now with this. Real easy to do. By convention, I like to do the proteins and cheeses first. I went kind of symmetrical. If you don't want lots of little hands crawling all over, you can go to the supermarkets and go to the section where they sell like all the little kitchen equipment. I found these real cute little and they're rad, so like they're perfect for Valentine. So I'm gonna do that because I don't want everybody like putting their hands all over everything, especially the little ones. Okay, and it's just so much easier to eat,
Yeah.
And there you go, charcuterie.
Wow.
Charcuterie. It didn't take me very long. It cost me about $30, and I could probably feed 8 people on the $30.
Wow.
I tend to buy the meats and the cheeses by the quarter pound. Custom meats like this are going to cost you somewhere around $9 a pound, maybe less depending on what it is. And, you get, there's so many different versions of these forced meats or preserved meats to choose from. You pick what you like, and it's relatively inexpensive once you kind of get the hang of it, right? You can add all the elements, all the chocolates and sweets that you like for the holidays. So I played with the color red a lot for this board. So I went with aesthetics to kind of go with the holiday theme, and it was just super easy to do.
That is amazing. Wow. I was reading my pantry. I found like some stuff that I could use. So I was right. I've got one of the things you talked about in the blog post is apple slices as a fruit. So I'm ready to go.
The thing I love about apples, I went so fast on this, because there's so much to cover. But the thing with apples is that's a fresh fruit, just like the grapes are. Nowhere did it say you couldn't use fresh fruit, and for a charcuterie board, they make great accents. I love apples because they're crisp. They have a nice bite to them. You can slice them as thin or as thick as you like. They layer on top of a cracker with a slice of cheese and maybe, a summer sausage. If you really want sour apple, acidity, you go with a Granny Smith apple, I tend to like honey crisp apples because they're crisp. They are slightly acidic, but they also have a lot of juice and sweetness to them. And it's just what I like doing,
Yeah, I checked actually. Yeah, so my husband bought this one, and it is in fact a Honey Crisp. So he's a keeper, right?
I have a soft spot in my heart for Honey Crisp because I used to live in New England before I became a chef. I was up there as a defense analyst, and we used to go apple picking in New Hampshire where I lived. And so memories, really positive, sweet memories. So,
Yeah, yeah. Wow, Dave, that board is amazing. Like it looks gorgeous
thank
and it's this is achievable, right? And it's something that like,
you.
families can even get their kids involved in helping assemble stuff, right? That they can be part of the creation, they can be part of the
Yep.
fun. And it makes Valentine's Day more special because we're kind of things are a little different right now, that like maybe it doesn't make sense to go out to a restaurant for a date night. And
Yeah.
that means that, the kids are with you when you're celebrating. But this means that they can be part of it. So oh yeah, at our house we have a bottle of sparkling grape juice so that the kids can kind of be in on the on the beverages too.
Yeah, I was going to suggest like a sparkling apple cider for the little ones. Oh, by the way, yeah, let me talk about that real quick. So I mentioned chocolate, lots of chocolate on this board. It's not a traditional element to the charcuterie board. There are a lot of people making custom boards in San Antonio right now that are candy boards. They call them candy charcuterie. Okay, this is charcuterie. Candy on a board is on a board, but I get it. It's kind of cute. But the thing about it is, what I get asked is, okay, Dave, so like we're grown-ups and we love chocolate, but we don't know how to pair the wines to chocolate if we're going to do that.
Right,
Well,
right.
the same thing would actually apply to like sparkling juices for the kids. The heavier the wine or the heavier the juice flavor, that pairs like the heavier, darker flavors on your board. Okay, so like for example, um, dark chocolate, like I have right here. The
Hmm.
darker and the more bitter the chocolate, the heavier the red. Okay. Whereas the sweeter stuff on here, like maybe the apricots, white wines would go great with that. But we're talking
Hmm.
about a mix. So it's really up to you what you like. For the kids, I would suggest like a little sparkling water and some apple juice together, or a sparkling cider, or a sparkling grape juice, like you suggested. And so that's how you would do that. But I get asked this a lot. Like, here's a picture of a particular famous, chocolate bar, and it says 72 on it. What does
Right.
that mean? What does the number mean, right? Well,
Yeah.
okay, so what that means, I'll bring the camera back up.
Or like,
So,
and I've got I have this is one of my favorites. It's a Lindt, but it's a 55%. So it's
okay,
kind of medium. Yeah.
that's my favorite milk chocolate right there. So here's the deal. The in the chocolate industry, the percentage of total cocoa product is that number. So it's usually a proprietary mix between the cocoa butter and the cocoa solids that
Okay.
combine adds up to 72 or 55 in the case of that bar you're holding there. The rest can be the other ingredients like sugar, vanilla, dairy solids if it's like white chocolate, That's what that means. So that number represents just the cacao product or derivatives of it, which when once separated can be the cocoa solids like cocoa powder or nibs, and then cocoa butter, the fat part. And so that's what that is.
That's interesting. So it's a heads up that like the 72 is going to be a lot stronger, right? Whereas this is a milk chocolate, so it's only 55. Although for milk chocolate, like this is stronger than most like Hershey bars and stuff, which is one
Yeah.
reason I like it. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
legally milk chocolate has to be in the 30s, somewhere in the 30s, and you got a 55%. So that's pretty heavy cocoa
yeah,
flavor. Yeah, I
yeah,
love it. For that reason, I love it.
yeah. No, sometimes in our family, like one of the things about the pandemic is, like there's good and bad, but like, being able to like sit around the dinner table and like ask my kids, get them involved in the conversation. Like we talk about current events, we talk about pop culture, we talk about what you want to be when you grow up. Just all kinds of conversations. I mean, this board is a great way to like bring a family together. Everybody's like nibbling and trying different things, but
Yes.
it gets people talking and it makes those connections.
It absolutely does. And, all my programming is generally what we call edutainment. We're adding some education, but also some entertainment. And that is another great way to approach learning with the kids at home. I love using food for contextualizing concepts, which is what, was the creative inspiration behind Foodie Classroom. It's like, okay, how am I going to use this in the world? That's what I used to think. I was one of those kids fortunate enough to take algebra in seventh grade, but I didn't quite understand everything I was learning. And I thought, well, how am I going to use this? What is this for? It wasn't
Right.
until culinary school at 37 years old that I finally figured it out. I thought, oh, okay. But, if I can help kids do that now, great, because that attracts them also to the culinary arts, horticulture, um, agriculture career fields if they go to school and start looking for degree programs to major in. Um, Community health, nutrition and dietetics, food science, which helps people create new products, especially things like cured products or dehydrated fruits. And, these are all things that we can help kids learn about. Sustainability. So we teach them about food security, food resiliency. One of the things that inspired Foodie Class was the fact that I have a friend who's an art teacher in the Northeast ISD, and she has closets full of art supplies, but she made one of them a pantry because she's in a high risk school, high transient population, not sure if the kids are eating. So I thought, I started asking her, well, what are you doing there? Are you actually funding this on your own? And she said, yeah, for the most part, but sometimes I get donations and it's great. The PTA will step in sometimes. And she's trying to make sure that the kids are eating while they're learning, because she's not sure that they're eating well during the week or between Friday and Monday, So then I thought, well, then why don't we create some lessons that maybe a teacher could look at and then run it as a lab in their classroom. And, the project is food, so the kids can eat the project. And that might actually address some of that without them necessarily getting into that, specifically. And
Right.
so that was actually part of the motivation. I learned a lot. I've learned a lot from teachers in the classroom, learning about what they need, what they observe from their kids. But to your point, yeah, it starts a conversation. So a lot of kids, when I had a campus garden when I was a private school chef, they wouldn't eat zucchini, but they would eat their zucchini. So if I got the kids out there to harvest it, then they became curious. A relationship was begun. And it was much easier to introduce a zucchini, side dish or, on the tray. And I took that to the San Antonio Botanical Garden when I created the Culinary Wellness Program, because apparently there are adults who won't eat zucchini, but they'll eat their zucchini. So we get them out there to harvest.
That's such a fun garden, because then, like, if you've only seen the food in the store and you haven't seen how it grows, and then you actually look at the trees, like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Basically, it's all relationships. So
yeah. Well, this is awesome, Dave. I'm so glad. This is a great activity. Is there, before we close off, I guess I want to remind everybody, they can find this recipe on the SA Turtle Moms blog. And sorry, I'm getting a little feedback. Jeff, Dave, do you have any kind of closing thoughts or call to action? I mean, I definitely, you said Foodie Classroom website is going to be up soon. I definitely hope folks go and visit that, and check out the recipes, check out the lesson plan.
Yeah. Oh, real quick. Yeah. So what I did was I delayed the opening of Foodie Classroom because I wanted to go back after some feedback from some teachers. They said, Dave, can you give us lesson plans for what you're teaching? And I said, well, but it's your lesson plan. You're teaching the standards. And they said, well, no, we like what you're doing. We want to see how you teach it. We'll adapt it for the classroom. But what is your way of doing it? So I went back and I thought, okay, I needed to create lesson plans for all of these lessons that I had. And then also recipe cards, because the kids are not necessarily going to have any use for the lesson plan. They're going to know how to make stuff at home, though. Think of it like an afternoon snack kind of project that they can do when they get home. So I decided to go back and, I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't look too good. But no, you can't see it. There's a lesson plan that will be hyperlinked with every video that will be put on YouTube as well. I have a YouTube channel coming out. And then there's also a recipe card that is a how-to from the beginning to end that down to about a 9-year-old reading level, but it is technically technical communication because it's a recipe. But we want everybody to be able to do that, to work together, parents or guardians and their kids, or the kids by themselves in some cases. So that will be all going up there on Foodie Classroom when we go live sometime this weekend.
That's so exciting. Okay, well, I'm really happy to help spread the word about Foodie Classroom, and I'm really grateful for the guest posts and also for this amazing demo. So, and I'm going to put the video in the blog post so folks can see the demo as they see the recipe too, if they're stumped about how to do the presentation on their board.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, the video will show people how to design their board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good deal. All right. Well, thanks, Dave. See you soon. Yeah. That looks fantastic. Oops. Wait a minute. All right. Signing off, Dave. Thank you.